Maya Thomas, a young black marketing professional living in Atlanta who thought her afternoon coffee run would be just another part of her day. But everything changed on a busy sidewalk outside a Starbucks when Officer Rick Dalton stopped her without cause, accused her without evidence, and in front of a growing crowd lifted the hem of her dress in what he called a routine search. That single moment of public violation lit the match. What followed was a national scandal, a federal trial, and a movement that challenged the very core of how power is used and abused in plain sight. As Maya fought for her voice to be heard, she uncovered not just one predator in uniform, but a system built to protect him. From courtroom battles to Capitol Hill, her journey exposed the cost of silence and the strength it takes to break it. So stay with us, because this isn't just a story about one woman. It's about every system that thought she wouldn't fight back. But before we dive in, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Under the fading amber light of a late Atlanta afternoon, Maya Thomas stepped out of Starbucks with her usual grace. White blazer pressed sharp, heels precise, a no-nonsense aura following each stride. She was ready to call it a day. A long client pitch had just ended, and coffee with two friends had given her a breath of fresh energy. She pulled her phone out to check the time. That's when she heard it. "Ma'am, stop right there." The voice was loud, firm, authoritative. People around her turned instinctively. Maya froze, glancing up to see two police officers walking toward her. The older one, broad-shouldered, buzz-cut, face hardened, spoke again. "We need to ask you a few questions." Officer Rick Dalton. His partner, noticeably younger, stood behind, not making eye contact. "Is there a problem?" Maya asked, her tone respectful but guarded. "There's been a theft reported nearby. You match the description," Dalton said, eyeing her like she'd already been tried and convicted. "Excuse me?" Maya's brow furrowed. "I just came out of Starbucks. I've been sitting inside for half an hour. You can ask the barista." Dalton didn't flinch. "I'll need to inspect your bag." She instinctively clutched it tighter. "On what grounds? I haven't done anything wrong." The small crowd on the sidewalk began to slow. Phones were raised, not yet recording, just curious. Dalton took a step closer. "If you have nothing to hide, you wouldn't mind cooperating. If you suspect me of a crime, take me in and file a report. But I'm not handing over my belongings without reason," Maya responded, standing firm. The younger officer shifted uncomfortably behind Dalton but said nothing. "Miss," Dalton said, lowering his voice with menace, "you're making this harder than it needs to be." "I'm asserting my rights," she replied. "You're abusing yours." Dalton's face twitched. "Final warning." Maya didn't move. The crowd's murmurs picked up. A man in a baseball cap mumbled, "Another one of those think they're above the law types." A woman next to him nodded. Dalton's tone hardened. "Put the bag on the ground or I will take it." When Maya refused, Dalton lunged. His hand grabbed the strap, yanking it violently. Maya stumbled back, nearly losing her balance. "Don't touch me," she shouted, pulling the bag to her chest. "You're violating my—" She didn't finish. Dalton shoved her aside. Her phone fell, hitting the pavement and sliding toward the feet of an onlooker. The screen lit up, camera still on. A teenage boy picked it up, glanced at it, and began to record. His friend followed suit. Then a woman across the street. Within 10 seconds, 3 live streams were active. Dalton rifled through Maya's purse with aggressive efficiency, tossing her wallet, lipstick, keys, and receipts onto the sidewalk like trash. "Nothing here," he said, eyes scanning. "Maybe you're hiding something else." Maya backed away, one hand instinctively holding the hem of her skirt. "Don't you dare! Step away from me," Dalton barked. "I'm conducting an investigation." The boy with the phone kept filming. "This is wrong," he whispered to his friend. She didn't do anything. Dalton suddenly crouched, his hand lunging for Maya's dress. She slapped it away. "Get off me!" she screamed. Gasps echoed from the onlookers. The live streams caught everything. "Hey!" a woman from the crowd yelled. "This is assault!" But no one moved. No one stepped in. Dalton stood, face flushed, grabbing the hem of Maya's skirt with a determined grip. Maya fought, kicking and slapping, but the officer's strength overpowered her. In one swift motion, he yanked it up above her knees. Her scream split the air like glass. Phones trembled in the hands of those filming. One camera caught the expression of the teenage boy, shocked, pale, uncertain whether to keep recording or intervene. "Why won't anyone stop him?" someone shouted. "She must be hiding something," another voice muttered. "She's resisting. That's on her." Maya struggled, one hand gripping her skirt, the other pushing against Dalton's chest. He shoved her backward against a wall, his grip unrelenting. Her body trembled not just from fear, but humiliation so sharp it cut deeper than any blow. "This is illegal," she cried. "You're violating my rights." "You think those matter when you look guilty?" Dalton snapped. "You people always play victim." That was the moment Officer Jake Miller moved. He took a step forward, voice low. "Rick, stop. You've gone too far." Dalton turned, fire in his eyes. "You questioning me, Miller? I'm saying this isn't right," Jake said, barely audible. "She's cooperating." "Back off or you're next," Dalton hissed. Jake stepped back. He wasn't ready. Maya's voice cracked. "I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done." Dalton let out a cold chuckle. "Go ahead. Who's going to believe you?" He dropped her skirt with mock politeness, brushing invisible dust from his hands. Maya fell to her knees, gathering her scattered belongings, her fingers shaken but purposeful. She looked up and locked eyes with Jake. He looked away. The crowd began to disperse, the excitement fading, discomfort setting in. They had filmed enough. They had seen enough, but not one of them had intervened. A woman approached, eyes wet. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "No one should be treated like that." Maya gave a tight nod, her mouth a flat line. She didn't speak. Her voice felt stolen. Back inside her apartment, Maya locked the door behind her. The silence was suffocating. She dropped the bag, pressed her back against the door, and slid down to the floor. Her heart was racing. Her head was spinning. She glanced at herself in the mirror by the entryway. Her dress was wrinkled, hair disheveled, expression unreadable. Her phone buzzed. Notifications, missed calls, and 3 links to live streams she hadn't known were shared. Each had tens of thousands of views, and each one came with comments that cut deeper than the act itself. Maya stared at the screen, her own face frozen mid-scream. She closed her eyes. She had survived the moment, but what came next was going to be even uglier. Maya returned home, shut the door behind her, and began bracing for a battle she never asked for, but could no longer avoid. Maya sat in the dark, legs folded on the living room floor, surrounded by the quiet hum of appliances and the faint buzz of the city outside. Her phone screen glowed on the coffee table, displaying a frozen frame from the live stream, her own face mid-scream, eyes wide, hands clawing. The apartment felt too clean, too still. Her breath came in short bursts as though her body refused to return to normal. Her mind wouldn't let her. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt his hand again, the weight of it on the fabric, the heat of humiliation burning through her bones. The notifications hadn't stopped. She had turned off the sound, but the vibrations came in waves. Messages, missed calls, alerts from social media platforms she hadn't opened in months. She hadn't read a single comment, but she didn't need to. She already knew what they would say. She reached for the phone. Her fingers hovered over the screen, then pulled back. She didn't want to see it, didn't want to feed the voices outside, but one name flashed through, Lauren, her best friend since college. No hashtags, just call me, please. Maya exhaled, tapped the message, and hit the call button. The line picked up almost instantly. Maya? Yeah, her voice rasped. Oh my God, I saw it. Are you? What the hell happened? It's real, Maya said flatly. It wasn't staged. It wasn't edited. That really happened. You don't have to explain anything. Maya, I'm so sorry. There was silence on the line, the kind that didn't feel empty, but unbearably full. You know what's crazy? Maya said after a moment. I didn't scream because I was scared. I screamed because I couldn't believe how normal it felt to everyone watching, like it was fine. No, Lauren whispered. It's not. Maya stood up slowly, pacing the room, unable to sit still. When I was 11, she said, a boy in my class, Andre Phillips, was walking to the cafeteria. He bumped into the school officer, just a shoulder tap. The cop spun around and slapped him in front of the whole courtyard. Andre fell backward, hit his head. I was standing 10 feet away. She stopped walking, staring into the shadowed hallway. What happened? Lauren asked. Nothing, Maya said. Andre got suspended for disrespect. The officer stayed on staff another 5 years. I didn't say anything. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't write about it. I just watched. Then I moved on. The silence pressed again, this time heavier. Maya, Lauren said slowly, you were a kid. What were you supposed to do? Not stay quiet, she replied. Not treat it like it was normal. You're not staying quiet now. Maya dropped onto the couch. I feel like I'm standing in that courtyard again, only this time I'm the one on the ground, and people are still just watching. Some people are watching because they care, Lauren said. Some are watching because they're angry, and some are watching because they're waiting to see if you break. Maya let the words sink in. I don't think I can go through this alone. You don't have to, Lauren said without hesitation. There's an organization I know, Voices United, run by a woman named Sarah Brooks. She's worked with women who've gone through this kind of abuse, especially at the hands of authority. Maya didn't respond at first. She stared at the ceiling, blinking hard. I'm not sure I'm ready to talk to a stranger. She's not a stranger to this, Lauren replied. She's smart, connected. She's not just there to listen. She knows what steps to take. Maya's jaw clenched. Her fingers dug into the couch cushion. I never thought I'd be the one on the news. You're not a story, Maya, Lauren said gently. You're a person who had something horrific happen to her. But you also have a voice. And right now, more people than you think are ready to hear it. Even if half of them are just there to tear me down, especially then. Maya stood again, walking to the window. The city lights glimmered below, headlights blinking along the avenues. She could see the intersection where it had happened just hours before. The same crosswalk, the same coffee shop. It looked harmless from here, like nothing had changed. But for her, everything had. Send me her number, Maya said quietly. I'll call tomorrow. I already sent it, Lauren said. You don't have to wait until tomorrow. I know, Maya replied, but tonight I need to breathe without feeling like I owe the world a reaction. Take your time, Lauren said, but not too much. The longer you wait, the louder their version becomes. Maya nodded, even though Lauren couldn't see her. Thank you. Always, Lauren said. You're not alone in this. Not for a second. After they hung up, Maya remained by the window for a while. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She just watched the stillness below, wondering how many others had stood right here, on the edge of silence and resistance. The night passed slowly, each hour blurring into the next, and when the sun finally crept over the skyline, Maya didn't feel rested, but she felt something close to ready. Lauren had planted a seed. one that Maya didn't realize she needed until now. The shame of silence had done its damage. It had burned through her past and left scars on her present. But the voice she had buried for years, under fear, under politeness, under caution, was clawing its way out. Lauren's last words replayed in her mind. "You don't have to go through this alone." As the morning light filled the room, Maya picked up her phone and opened the contact Lauren had sent. Sarah Brooks, founder. Voices united. She stared at the screen, then took a deep breath. It was time. Lauren had introduced her to the only person who might know where to start. The office of Voices United sat tucked inside a second-floor walk-up above a discount bookstore and a tax service, the kind of location that didn't attract attention but never stopped working. It was quiet, modest, and filled with soft lamplight and second-hand furniture. But there was a pulse to it, a quiet undercurrent of urgency in the air. Maya sat across from Sarah Brooks, her back straight, hands folded tightly in her lap. Sarah had the kind of presence that absorbed everything: soft voice, sharp eyes, the calm of someone who had heard far worse but never let it slide. Maya had hesitated before walking through the front door, but now that she was here, her words came in a steady stream. No embellishments, no editorializing. She just told Sarah exactly what had happened. Sarah didn't interrupt. She scribbled notes on a yellow legal pad, her pen moving quickly, her face unreadable. When Maya finished, there was a pause. "Thank you for trusting me with that," Sarah said. "I wish I could say it's the first time I've heard a story like this." "That doesn't make me feel better," Maya said. "I know," Sarah replied, "but it means you're not alone, and it means you're not the only one who's ready to fight this." Maya pulled a folded envelope from her purse and placed it on the desk. "This is the formal complaint I filed with the Fulton County Police Department." Sarah opened it without a word, scanning quickly. Maya watched her eyes narrow slightly. "It's detailed," Sarah said. "You included time, place, officer's name, witnesses. This is solid." "I thought so too," Maya said. "That's why I was surprised when I got this." She slid another piece of paper forward. Sarah picked it up, a form letter, printed on plain white stock, carrying the department's letterhead. "We have reviewed your complaint and determined that it does not meet the threshold for internal investigation." Sarah read it out loud, her tone flat, then looked up. "They didn't even call you?" Maya shook her head. "No one reached out, no follow-up, just a letter saying it wasn't enough. This is them closing the door before the light even gets in," Sarah said. "It's standard. Disgusting, but standard." "So what now?" Maya asked. "If they won't even open an internal investigation, then what's the point?" "The point," Sarah said, leaning forward, "is that you've just taken the first real step. And now we go where they can't hide behind a form letter." Maya's shoulders dropped slightly, the first sign of release, but it was short-lived. "I thought giving them everything, video links, timestamps, names, they'd have to act. It was all right there." "They don't want to act," Sarah said, "because acting means admitting one of their own crossed a line." "He didn't just cross it," Maya said. "He stepped over it and never looked back." Sarah sat back, folded her arms. "Let me ask you something. Did Officer Dalton ever say your name?" Maya blinked. "What?" "During the encounter," Sarah clarified. "Did he address you by name? Ask to confirm your identity? Ask for ID before grabbing your things?" Maya thought for a second. "No, he didn't. He just started accusing me. Said I matched a description. Never even asked my name." "Then he wasn't investigating anything," Sarah said. "He was asserting power. That matters, and it changes how we build your case." Maya took a slow breath. "How do you stay calm doing this?" "I don't," Sarah said, "but I stay focused." She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. "There's something you need to see." She slid it across the table. "You're not the first woman to name Rick Dalton in a complaint." Maya hesitated, then flipped the folder open. Inside were 3 printed reports, each redacted, but legible enough to reveal the name of the officer involved. "These are from before?" Maya asked. "The first one was filed 3 years ago," Sarah said. "A woman named Danielle Bishop said Officer Dalton forcibly searched her bag outside a library while she was waiting for her son. The second was filed by a retail worker, Karen Langston, who said he cornered her behind a loading dock after accusing her of loitering. The third is from a college student, Jasmine Moore. She said he followed her out of a convenience store and questioned her about shoplifting, then tried to frisk her when she refused to open her purse. Were any of them investigated?" Maya asked. "None of them," Sarah said. "All dismissed without review. No disciplinary action, no further inquiry." Maya stared down at the reports. "Why aren't these public?" "Because they were all handled internally, behind closed doors, and because none of them had video." "But mine does," Maya said. 3 videos, different angles, live viewers. People saw it happen, and that's what changes everything," Sarah said. "But it also makes you a bigger threat. They'll come harder. They'll push back in ways that don't always look obvious." "I'm ready," Maya said, though her voice betrayed the uncertainty just beneath. "You don't have to be," Sarah said. "You just have to keep showing up. That's how pressure builds, one stone at a time." "What happened to the other women?" Maya asked. "Did they just let it go?" "One moved out of state," Sarah said. "Another tried to go public, but got slammed in the press. The last, she stopped returning calls." "So I'm it now," Maya said. "You're the one that made it visible," Sarah corrected. "And that's what they can't undo." Maya folded the letter back into her bag. "Then, let's start." Sarah nodded. "I'll begin compiling everything we need. Your footage, the eyewitness accounts, your formal statement, and I'll connect you with someone on the legal side who knows how to take this beyond local review." Maya stood, gripping her purse tightly. Her legs felt heavier than when she walked in, but her steps felt clearer, stronger. "One last question," she said as she reached the door. "Why does someone like Rick Dalton get to keep his badge after all this?" "Because no one's thrown the first stone hard enough to crack the wall," Sarah said. "Until now." Maya didn't reply. She just nodded once and stepped into the hallway, carrying with her more than a folder or a complaint. She carried the weight of 3 women who hadn't been heard, and the pressure of becoming the one who finally would. Sarah watched the door close behind her, then turned back to her desk, where the file on Rick Dalton remained open, waiting. The conference room inside the office of Green and Low Legal Services was small but functional, with a rectangular table, 4 mismatched chairs, and a whiteboard still smudged with faint notes from a previous meeting. On one wall hung a framed poster from a 2003 civil rights trial, slightly tilted. It wasn't polished, but it felt deliberate, like everything in this room existed for a purpose more than appearance. Sarah Brooks sat at the end of the table, flipping through a thick binder, the edges dog-eared from use. Across from her, Maya watched closely, fingers curled around a paper cup of water she hadn't touched. Beside them, Pablo Green leaned forward in his chair, sleeves rolled to his elbows, reading glasses perched low on his nose. His tone was measured, but the documents in front of him spoke louder than words. "This," he said, tapping one page, "was never meant to reach public hands." "Where did it come from?" Maya asked. "Technically, a whistleblower," Pablo answered. "Unofficially, a former administrative assistant from Internal Affairs who saw too much and couldn't ignore it. She passed it through voices before resigning." Sarah pushed the binder slightly toward Maya. "The file you're looking at is from 2019. The subject of the complaint was a 17-year-old named Olivia Marks. She had just finished her shift at a movie theater when Officer Dalton stopped her outside the employee exit. Pablo continued. He told her she matched the description of a shoplifting suspect. He claimed he needed to search her backpack. She said he reached inside without permission, then asked her to stand with her arms out so he could verify she wasn't hiding anything on her person. Maya didn't move, but her expression darkened. She refused, didn't she? She tried, Sarah said, but he told her that noncompliance would be treated as obstruction. He put his hands on her shoulders. She described it as feeling cornered. Did she report it? Maya asked. She did. She filed a statement through her school's resource officer. It went to the department. Then it vanished, Pablo said. They marked it as a miscommunication during lawful detainment. Maya stared at the page, her jaw tight. So, he's been doing this for years, to girls, to women, and the reports just disappear. They don't disappear, Pablo said. They're buried, marked as resolved before they're ever questioned. He didn't just cross a line with me, Maya said. He's been walking that line for a long time. The only difference now is that someone filmed it. And that matters, Pablo said. Public footage changes everything. It forces institutions to pretend they care. How many complaints are in that binder? She asked. 7, Sarah answered. 4 written, 3 verbal, but recorded in logs. None pursued. Were they all women? Every one, Pablo said. 2 were minors. 1 didn't even know she could file a complaint until years later. Maya leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. This is systemic. Exactly, Pablo replied. And that's what makes your case more than personal. It's historical and dangerous. For him, for the department, and for everyone who signed off on the cover-ups. We've seen this before, Sarah added. Patterns of abuse don't die on their own. They get interrupted, usually by someone who never asked to be the one to do it. Maya looked at her. What happened to Olivia? Her parents moved her to another school district 6 months later, Sarah said. The report never went public. She's now in college up north. She never responded to follow-up inquiries. They broke her, Maya muttered. They didn't have to discredit her. They just had to wear her down. That's the plan, Pablo said. Drain the will, kill the momentum, make the fight harder than the injustice. Maya closed the binder and slid it back towards Sarah. Not this time. Pablo nodded once. Good, because now that we're moving into federal review territory, we need every ounce of documentation on the record. Your statement, your footage, eyewitnesses, and every prior complaint we can verify. We're building something that won't fall apart under pressure. Maya's phone vibrated on the table. She glanced at it, expecting a message from Lauren. It was a text from an unknown number. Her eyes narrowed as she read it silently. What is it? Sarah asked. Maya turned the screen toward her. The text read, Nice dress. Would be a shame if it got lifted again. Pablo leaned over and read it, then looked at Maya. Is this the first one? First from this number, Maya said. I've had other messages, but nothing that direct. We'll trace it, Pablo said. We'll get the number documented, and we'll report it to the case agent assigned to the Federal Review. Harassment and intimidation are common once pressure starts working. They're trying to make me back down, Maya said. They want me to be afraid. They don't want you to be afraid, Sarah corrected. They want you to be exhausted. Fear fades. Fatigue festers. They're betting on time more than tactics. Maya stared at her phone a moment longer, then powered it off. They're not getting what they want. Good, Pablo said, because the next steps are where this starts to hurt them. He slid a new form across the table. This is your formal notice of intent to pursue federal civil rights litigation. It starts the clock. Once it's submitted, they can't claim ignorance or neutrality. Maya picked up the pen and signed. No hesitation. And now? She asked. "Now we go loud," Pablo said. "You'll probably get more messages, more pushback, maybe even surveillance. But the moment they realize you're not moving, they'll escalate. That's when they make mistakes." Maya folded the paper and placed it in her folder. Let them. Outside, the sky had dimmed to gray. The city bustled on, unaware that inside one quiet room, a line had been drawn. Rick Dalton had a history of hands, but now someone was documenting where those hands had gone. The night pressed against the windows like a living thing. Inside her apartment, Maya moved with deliberate calm, but her eyes flicked toward the balcony every few minutes. The curtain barely shifted, but she felt the presence on the other side. She had felt it since late afternoon when she noticed the same black SUV parked on the curb across from her building. It wasn't the make or model that bothered her. It was the fact that it had no plates, no stickers, no sign it belonged to anyone in the neighborhood. She had seen it before, not yesterday, not the day before, but this evening, just after she'd stepped out for groceries, it had appeared again. Same windows, tinted pitch black, same slight rumble and idle, the same silence that said everything. It hadn't moved in hours. At first, she thought she was overreacting. Her nerves had been stretched thin since the text, but when she'd taken the long way back from the store, an unnecessary detour through side streets and alleyways, the SUV had repositioned itself closer to the corner of her building. Not aggressive, just present, patient, watching. She double-checked the locks. Top, deadbolt, bottom latch, security bar. Then she opened the camera app on her phone and navigated to the building's front door feed. The image came up blank, static. She frowned, tried refreshing. The app spun. Offline. It read. She grabbed her keys and stepped into the hallway, padding quietly toward the stairwell. There was a maintenance closet just outside the main entrance where the security panel was kept. As she opened the outer door, a gust of wind caught the edge of her coat. She pulled it tighter, scanning the street. The SUV was still there. Lights off, windows dark. The sidewalk was empty. No joggers, no dog walkers, no delivery drivers. Too quiet for a Thursday night. She turned the key to open the panel. Inside, the wiring looked intact, but the camera connector had been twisted, pulled just enough to disconnect the feed. Not broken, just disabled, deliberate. Maya's pulse quickened. She reset the plug and rebooted the system. The feed flickered back to life. From the small screen, she could now see the front door and the SUV parked just 20 yards away. She closed the cabinet and walked back upstairs, not running, not panicking, just moving with enough control to keep her breath steady. Inside her apartment, the lights felt too bright. She dimmed them. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She didn't answer. Then came the message. Not from a stranger, from Lauren. It read, "Call me now." Maya didn't hesitate. Lauren picked up after one ring. "Someone came into the clinic asking about you." Maya's voice caught. "What?" "A man," Lauren said. "Mid-30s, clean cut. Said he was trying to reconnect with a college friend. Asked if you still worked in marketing. Wanted to know where." "What did you tell him?" "Nothing," Lauren said firmly. "I said I hadn't spoken to you in weeks." He smiled, said no problem, and left. But Maya, he didn't look like someone lost. He looked like someone making a checklist. Maya sat down on the edge of her couch, hand gripping the phone tighter. Did he give a name? No. He wore a badge on his belt, but it wasn't visible. Might have been fake, or not. Maya stood and walked toward the window. The SUV's headlights flashed once, quick and subtle, then went dark again. "It's not just threats anymore," she said. "They're testing the perimeter. You need to report this." "To who?" Maya snapped. "To the department that already decided I'm not worth investigating. Or to the people protecting him." Lauren's silence was answer enough. Maya inhaled deeply. "I'll figure it out. Do not handle this alone," Lauren said. "I mean it. I won't." Maya promised, ending the call. She put the phone down, crossed the room, and turned off every light except the one above the kitchen sink. It cast a soft glow across the apartment, but left most of it in shadow. She moved to the bedroom, pulled the curtains shut, and stood in the darkness. Her heart wasn't racing anymore. It had settled into something colder, sharper, not fear, awareness. She opened her email, scrolled past the messages from Sarah and Pablo, and opened a blank note. At the top, she typed, "Incidents to document." Then, one by one, she listed the SUV, the camera feed, the stranger at the clinic, timestamps, descriptions, observations. She would not forget. She would not doubt herself later. She was compiling evidence for no one but herself, for now. When she finished, she saved it, encrypted it, and backed it up. She returned to the living room. Her phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't from an unknown number. No caller ID, no contact name, just one line. "I saw what happened. I was there. I'm scared too." The message was unsigned, but she knew who it had to be. She replied with a single word. "Who?" Seconds later, the answer came. "You know me. I was the other officer. I wanted to stop him. I froze. I'm sorry." Her pulse spiked. She sat upright, fingers flying across the screen. "Jake?" The typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared. 30 seconds passed. Then another message arrived. "Don't use my name. Not here. Not yet. I don't know who's watching, but I saw everything, and I can't live with staying silent." Maya's eyes narrowed. She stared down at the message, a mix of fury and recognition rising inside her. This wasn't over. Not even close. And maybe, just maybe, someone on the inside was ready to crack. The precinct smelled like old paper, burnt coffee, and suppressed tension. Officer Jake Miller sat at his desk, the tip of his pen tapping the corner of a closed notepad. Around him, keyboards clicked, radios buzzed, and phones rang. No one looked at him, and he preferred it that way. He stared at the computer screen in front of him, pretending to read the daily shift report while his thoughts spiraled toward a memory he couldn't shake. It had happened during a night patrol in the warehouse district nearly a year ago. Rick Dalton had been his partner that shift. They were responding to a noise complaint near a loading dock behind a strip of shuttered shops. When they arrived, a delivery driver, a middle-aged Vietnamese man, was loading crates. He looked startled, confused, but not aggressive. Rick got out of the cruiser first. Jake remembered that the man had barely spoken when Rick grabbed his shoulder, spun him toward the wall, and pushed him against the brick. The man had cried out, his voice high-pitched, pleading. Jake remembered the sound more than the words. "Compliance," Rick had muttered. "That's the only language these people understand." Jake had stood 5 feet away, frozen. He hadn't helped. He hadn't stopped it. He had stood there with his hands on his belt, watching his partner assault someone with no provocation, and said nothing. Later, Rick wrote in the incident report that the suspect had been hostile and resisted questioning. The delivery driver had been cited for trespassing and released. Jake had signed the report. No questions asked. That moment had followed him ever since, tucked behind every other call, riding in the silence between sirens, hiding beneath every unspoken truth in the locker room. He closed the folder on his desk and exhaled. Across the room, Rick Dalton entered through the back hallway, joking with another officer, one hand lazily holding a coffee cup. His voice was loud, confident. He slapped someone's shoulder and threw his head back in a fake laugh. Jake's stomach turned. Rick caught his eye across the room and gave a small nod. Jake looked away. He gathered his things, tucked a manila envelope into his jacket, and headed for the parking lot. The cold air outside helped. He walked to his car, unlocked it, but didn't get in. Instead, he stood by the driver's side door, watching his breath cloud in the air. His phone buzzed. A new message from a temporary number he had set up 2 days earlier. The reply he'd been waiting for. It was from Maya. One word. Where? He typed back. Lower level. East lot. 9 p.m. Come alone. He added a second line. Bring nothing that can be tracked. Then he paused, deleted it, and sent only the time and place. He knew she would understand. At 8:58, Jake sat in his unmarked sedan in the far corner of the underground lot beneath a shopping center closed for renovations. The flickering overhead lights buzzed unevenly. A few stray cars were parked in shadows. At 9:01, Maya appeared. Her hood was up, hands tucked into her coat. She looked around before walking to the passenger door and sliding in. "No one followed me," she said, before he asked. Jake didn't start the engine. The silence between them held weight. "You were there," she said. "I remember your face." He nodded. "I should have stepped in. But you didn't." His hands clenched on the steering wheel. "I was afraid." "Of him?" she asked. "Or of losing your badge?" "Both," Jake admitted. "And I hate that that's true." Maya glanced at the back seat where a folder rested. "What's that?" "My notes," Jake said. "Everything I've seen, everything I couldn't say out loud. Internal memos, incident reports that don't match witness statements, video logs that were erased or misfiled, including the warehouse assault." "The Asian man," Maya said. "That was you." "Rick wrote it up as resisting arrest," Jake said. "But the man was just unloading boxes. He was polite, scared. There was no reason for it." "And you signed off on it," Maya said. "Because I didn't want to be the guy who breaks the chain," Jake said. "We're told to back each other no matter what. It's drilled into us, even when it makes you sick." Maya studied him. "So why now?" "Because I saw what he did to you," Jake said, "and I couldn't sleep after. Because that kid, Andre Nguyen, that was his name, he called me Sir the whole time, even after Rick shoved him to the ground. And I did nothing. I've been quiet too long." "Silence kept him in uniform," Maya said. "And it kept people like me vulnerable," Jake nodded. "I know. That's why I'm talking now." He reached into the back seat and handed her the folder. "This is just the beginning. I have more, but if I get caught leaking it, they'll come after me like they're coming after you." Maya took the folder carefully. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because the department won't listen to me," Jake said. "They'll bury me faster than they buried your complaint. But if you take it to the right people, outside the city, you might get traction, federal attention." She didn't thank him. She just opened the folder and scanned the first few pages. Printed reports, time stamps, matching names, her own among them. "You're still on the inside," she said. "You could still be useful." "I know," he said. "I'll keep collecting, quietly, but I need to know someone's doing something with it." She looked up at him. "Then meet me again next week, same place. I'll have someone with me, someone who can take this further." He nodded once. She stepped out of the car without another word. Jake watched her walk into the darkness, coat flapping slightly in the wind. Silence had kept Rick Dalton protected, but silence was ending. The wind moved through the rows of parked cars like breath between teeth. The Safeway lot was nearly deserted. A flickering overhead light cast in sharp angles a shadow across the pavement. Maya stood beside a dented gray Camry, hands deep in her coat pockets, her breath visible in the cold. At exactly midnight, Jake pulled up in a city-issued sedan, headlights off. He parked 2 spaces down and got out, his expression tense but composed. No handshake, no greeting. They moved wordlessly to the passenger side, where Jake opened the door and retrieved a folder thick with printed reports, handwritten notes and photographs clipped at the corners. He handed it to her. "This is everything I could find without raising red flags," he said. "Some of it's copied from old logs, others are from a shared drive no one audits. 9 formal complaints, all dismissed. No follow-up interviews, no body cam footage filed, no internal review documentation. Maya opened the folder and scanned the top page. A name she didn't recognize. Under it, a date from 2 years ago. Was she arrested? No, Jake said. She walked away, but the complaint was filed 2 days later. She accused Dalton of groping her during a pat-down outside a movie theater, said she wasn't even the person they were looking for. He said she matched a vague description. They all match vague descriptions, Maya muttered. She turned the page. Another name, another incident. A college student accused of loitering on campus. Same outcome. This one, Jake said, pointing at the third page, was filed by a delivery driver. She said he stopped her outside a grocery store, accused her of suspicious behavior, made her empty her entire van. She said he made comments about her shirt being too tight, said he asked her if she had been drinking, even though she had just finished her shift. Were any of these ever seen by IA? Maya asked. A couple got assigned case numbers, but they were marked administratively closed within 48 hours. Most never made it past the desk sergeant. No disciplinary record, none that stuck. He's clean on paper. Maya flipped through faster now, reading summaries, noting locations, similarities. Some incidents had occurred during late-night patrols, others during daylight in public places. Most of the women described being alone. Most described the same pattern: aggressive questioning, forced searches, intimidation. He escalates when he thinks no one's watching, she said, but he's also confident. That means someone's covering for him. Someone or several people, Jake said. He's been partnered with a rotating list of officers. Some rookies, some veterans. He trains new recruits. His reports get signed without question. That's not just protection, Maya said. That's endorsement. It's more than that, Jake said. It's insulation. He doesn't just rely on the system. He's part of the structure that keeps itself intact. Maya stopped at one name near the bottom of the stack. This one's a minor. 17, Jake confirmed. Claimed Dalton asked her to exit a public bus after claiming she fit the description of a runaway. Said he asked to search her backpack. No guardian present. No call made to child services. And the department didn't report that. They claimed it was a misunderstanding. She was released. No charges. Her complaint disappeared. Maya held the folder tighter. Her hands were starting to tremble, not from the cold. He's a predator with a badge, she said, and they made sure no one could trace the blood back to them. That's why I'm giving this to you, Jake said, because I know I'm complicit, even if I didn't lay hands. I stood by too long. So did everyone else, Maya replied, but that doesn't mean we have to stay there. Jake looked away for a moment. You know what the worst part is? Every time one of these women walked away thinking they'd been humiliated or isolated, they were actually just added to his pattern. Another notch on a belt no one ever checked. Until now, Maya said. She closed the folder and tucked it under her arm. Do you think they'll retaliate? Jake asked. Yes, she said without hesitation. But I think they already started. You're right, he said. They think you're alone. They're betting you'll fold under pressure. Then it's time they learn I'm not alone anymore, Maya said. She stepped back from the car. I'm taking this to Sarah. We're going to find them. Every name in this folder, one by one. They won't all talk, Jake warned. Some are scared. Some think it won't matter. We only need a few to start, Maya said. Just enough to show the pattern. Just enough to break the silence. Jake nodded. I'll keep digging from the inside. Quietly. Good, Maya said. Because we're going public. And when we do, this folder becomes more than paper. It becomes leverage. She turned and walked into the dark, disappearing into the line of parked cars. Jake stayed there a few seconds longer, then got back into his vehicle, eyes scanning the lot. The system had been feeding Rick Dalton for years. It had shielded him, ignored him, rewarded him. But now it was time to starve that protection. Maya and Sarah weren't looking for justice one case at a time. They were building something larger, a narrative of truth the system couldn't redact. The smell of burnt espresso lingered in the air as Maya stepped into Liberty Grounds, a small neighborhood cafe with creaky floors, low ceilings, and furniture that didn't match but felt lived in. It was mid-morning, and the place was mostly empty except for a student hunched over a laptop and a man flipping through a newspaper near the window. Sarah Brooks sat at a corner table, waving Maya over. Across from her were two women Maya had never met in person but already felt connected to. Isabel was younger than she expected, maybe 22, thin and wary with nervous eyes that kept scanning the door. Clara was older, maybe mid-30s, hair tied back, the faint lines around her mouth deepening every time she clenched her jaw. "Thanks for coming," Maya said, pulling out a chair. Isabel nodded once but didn't speak. Clara gave a polite smile, tight and hesitant. Sarah introduced them, then let the silence sit for a moment. Maya didn't try to fill it. Eventually, Clara cleared her throat. "I almost didn't come. I told myself I had nothing more to say. But you did come," Maya said. "That means something." Clara stared into her coffee. "It means I'm tired of pretending it didn't happen." Isabel shifted in her seat. "I never talked about it. Not really. Not even with my mom." Sarah leaned forward. "No one has to say anything they're not ready to, but if you're willing, it helps to speak it aloud, even once." Isabel's voice was small but steady. "It was last spring. I was at the downtown bus terminal waiting for a friend. Rick Dalton walked up, said someone matching my description had been seen shoplifting from a nearby store. I told him I hadn't left the terminal. He told me to empty my pockets. I did. Then he said I looked nervous, like I was hiding something." She paused. "He grabbed my bag, pulled everything out right there on the pavement. Tampons, asthma inhaler, gum, wallet, scattered everywhere. People just stood around watching." Maya didn't blink. "Did he touch you?" "Not directly," Isabel said, "but he stepped close, too close, like he wanted me to flinch. Then he told me to watch my attitude, that if I made trouble, I'd be booked for obstruction." "Did you file a complaint?" Sarah asked. Isabel shook her head. "I didn't even think it would matter." Clara leaned back, arms crossed. "That's what they count on." Maya looked at her. "What happened to you?" Clara's voice was sharper, angrier. "It was broad daylight. I was walking home from the grocery store with my kids. My youngest had just dropped his juice box. We stopped at the curb and Rick pulled up. Said there'd been a call about a suspicious woman in the neighborhood." "Let me guess," Maya said. "You match the description." "Exactly," Clara said. "He asked where I lived. I told him it was none of his business. He said that made me sound defensive. My kids were staring, scared. He told me to step back, then grabbed the edge of my skirt like he had the right to search me for weapons." Maya stiffened. "Did he?" "I slapped his hand away," Clara said, "and he threatened to call Child Protective Services. Said I was putting my children at risk by escalating a situation with law enforcement." "Did anyone step in?" Maya asked. A man walking his dog slowed down, looked like he might say something. Rick turned and gave him a look. He kept walking. Clara exhaled sharply. "The next day, someone left a flyer under my windshield. Neighborhood Watch newsletter. No contact name, just a typed message. 'We're watching too.' He knew exactly what he was doing," Sarah said, "and the system let him. I tried to let it go," Clara said, "but every time I walk past that corner I feel my kids watching me, like they're still waiting for me to fight back." "You are fighting now," Maya said, "just by sitting here." Isabel nodded slowly. "I thought I was the only one, that maybe I had imagined the worst of it. They want us to feel isolated," Maya said. "That's how they keep us quiet." "But we're not quiet anymore," Clara said, her voice gaining strength. "Are we?" Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a printed spreadsheet. "Jake Miller, the officer who stood by during Maya's incident, gave us access to suppressed internal records. You're both on that list. So are 7 other women. How many of them are speaking up?" Isabel asked. "That's what we're trying to find out," Maya said. "One by one. If we can reach them, show them they're not alone, we might be able to build something that the department can't ignore." Clara looked at Isabel, then back at Maya. "What happens when they come after us for talking?" "They will," Maya said, "but this time they'll have to come after all of us." Sarah looked down at her phone. A new voicemail had just come in. Unknown number. She played it on speaker. The voice was older, weary, but firm. "My name is Janet Reeves. I used to wear the badge. I know that name. Dalton. I stood up to him once. It cost me my career. But I'm still standing. I think it's time I talk." They all stared at the phone. "That name sounds familiar," Clara said. "She was in the news a few years back," Sarah said. "Whistleblower, internal affairs, disappeared from the headlines fast." Maya pushed her chair back slowly. "Then we find her. Today." The first survivors had found one another, and now the walls of silence were starting to crack. The house sat near the edge of Decatur, a single-story brick structure with ivy creeping over the eaves and blinds drawn tight across every window. It didn't look like the home of someone preparing to step back into a battle they'd been forced out of years ago. But inside, everything was still in place. Files stacked in cabinets, a corkboard covered in red yarn and post-it notes, boxes labeled IA correspondence, testimonies ignored, and names they buried. Janet Reeves opened the door wearing a gray hoodie and jeans, her silver hair pulled into a loose ponytail. She looked older than her 54 years, not from age but from impact, like someone who had absorbed too many hits and stopped counting bruises. "You came fast," she said, stepping aside to let Maya and Sarah in. "I don't do voicemail unless it's urgent. That one sounded urgent." Sarah nodded. "You said you had history with Dalton." "More than history," Janet replied. "I filed a report about him in 2016. That's when everything fell apart." She led them into the living room. No framed photos, no decorations, just file boxes, a worn couch, and a coffee table with a stack of police manuals that hadn't been updated in years. Maya sat silently, watching Janet move. There was a stiffness in her gait, a quiet discipline that hadn't left her, even in retirement. "Let me guess," Sarah said. "You were with Internal Affairs." "Briefly," Janet replied. 3 years. Before that, I was a patrol officer, earned my stripes, never had a problem, until I started asking questions." She dropped into the recliner and pulled open a thin folder. This girl's name was Emily Coates, 17, junior at Eastview Academy, good student, quiet, no disciplinary history. She stayed after school for tutoring one day, walked out late, and was stopped by Rick Dalton. "Why?" Maya asked. She matched the profile of someone loitering near faculty vehicles. At least, that's what he wrote in the report. No footage, no witness statements, just his word. "And what did she report?" Sarah asked. Janet's mouth tightened. "She said he asked for her ID. She gave it. Then he said she was acting nervous, told her to put her backpack on the ground and spread her arms. He patted her down in the middle of the lot. No female officer present. No parental contact. When she asked if she could call her mother, he told her to stop resisting." Maya's voice was low. "Did he touch her inappropriately?" She said he pressed his hand along her upper thighs, brushed her chest with the back of his wrist, told her to relax or he'd have to restrain her. She didn't have the words to describe what was happening, but it was clear. She was terrified. Sarah crossed her arms. "And you opened an investigation." "I tried," Janet said. "I submitted a memo to command, requested body cam footage, got nothing. 3 days later, the file was reassigned to another officer. Then it disappeared. What happened to the girl? Maya asked. Transferred schools? Stopped responding to calls? Her mother left 3 voicemails saying they didn't want to press charges anymore. Then nothing. Janet opened a second folder. A week after I pushed for a follow-up, I was pulled into a meeting with the deputy chief. They said I was overreaching, creating tension, questioning the integrity of the department. 2 months later, I was reassigned to a desk job downtown. A year after that, I was advised to take early retirement or face departmental review for insubordination. So they pushed you out, Sarah said. They erased me, Janet corrected, took my pension down a tier, blocked my employment requests with other agencies. I filed an appeal. It vanished. So I moved out here and started documenting everything they didn't want recorded. She nodded toward the stacks around the room. That's what's left. Maya's hands curled into fists. You did the right thing, and they buried you for it. They wanted me to feel alone, Janet said. And for a while it worked, until I saw your name on the news, until I saw Dalton's name again. Sarah leaned forward. We're building a case. Multiple survivors. A growing list of complaints. We need someone who's been on the inside. Someone who can speak to the culture that let him thrive. I won't testify under my real name, Janet said quickly. Not yet. I've seen what they do to people who cross them publicly. But I'll give you everything I have, reports, memos, emails, and I'll sign an affidavit under sealed conditions. That's enough for now, Sarah said. You'll be protected during the early phases of the investigation. Janet looked at Maya. You've done something that none of us could. You've made this visible. Maya shook her head. Not me. All of us. We're not letting them rewrite the story. This time. Janet stood and pulled another box from the shelf. Inside were printed emails, logbook copies, and a flash drive labeled simply Dalton 16. She handed it to Sarah. If I disappear, that doesn't. We won't let you disappear, Maya said. Not again. Janet managed a tired smile. Just make sure the world sees what they tried to erase. Outside, the wind picked up. But inside that house, for the first time in years, Janet Reeves wasn't a silenced officer. She was a witness. And now, she was ready to speak. Sunlight spilled through the blinds at the Voices United office, but no one noticed. The usual hum of the morning routine was replaced with frantic keystrokes, vibrating phones, and a growing stream of incoming messages. Sarah Brooks sat hunched over her laptop at the main desk, eyes scanning headlines that had started appearing just after 7 a.m. Maya stood near the window, phone in hand, watching a video loop in silence. No caption needed, no explanation. The footage spoke for itself. A police officer, Rick Dalton, unmistakably him, was seen shoving a black teenage boy backward against a sidewalk trash can. The kid stumbled, lost balance, and fell hard. Rick didn't flinch. Instead, he looked down, smirked, and muttered something before walking away. The voice was faint, but the words were clear with subtitles. Stay out of the way next time. Sarah looked up. How did this get out? Anonymous leak, Maya said, her voice flat. Posted on a burner TikTok account at 6 this morning. Already reshared over 300,000 times. And confirmed. Cross-referenced with street cameras from the block. It happened downtown 2 years ago. The teen never pressed charges, but his name's being passed around now. People are trying to find him. Sarah turned the volume down on her own screen. It's already on Reddit, Twitter, YouTube. No one can stop it now. Maya scrolled through trending hashtags. #lifted, buy the badge. #Dalton files. #justice for Andre. The last one hit hardest. The boy's first name had already surfaced. So had others. We were ready for this, Sarah said, mostly to herself. We knew something would leak, but not like this. It's not from us, Maya said. but whoever posted it wanted the fire started, and it's burning fast. One tweet read, "You're telling me Rick Dalton did this and still has a badge? What else are they hiding?" Another simply said, "Lifted skirts, lifted kids, hat lifted by the badge." Sarah rubbed her temple. Voices is getting tagged in every thread. I've got news outlets calling, trying to get a statement. Half of them pretending they care. The other half fishing for a soundbite to undermine the story. Maya stared at her screen. It's going viral because people recognize the pattern. You can't look at that clip and still argue it's isolated. But the department will try, Sarah said. They'll deny, deflect, then discredit. She clicked open her inbox. We've already got an email from their communications officer, denying everything, calling it a smear campaign. And what's our move? Maya asked. We confirm nothing publicly, Sarah said. Not yet. We let it grow. Let them respond first. Then we follow with what we've collected, on our terms. Maya's phone buzzed again. Lauren had texted, "Your name's in 3 headlines already. You okay?" She replied quickly, "Not okay, but prepared." Sarah stood, walked to the printer, and grabbed a hard copy of the department's official statement that had just come through. "Listen to this," she said, reading aloud. "The Atlanta Police Department takes all accusations seriously. At this time, there is no verified evidence connecting Officer Dalton to the video circulating online. We ask the public to refrain from speculation while we review the situation internally." Classic, Maya said. "They're stalling. They're trying to buy time and cast doubt," Sarah replied. "But it's not going to hold." Maya paced. "Have you checked the local feeds? Half the city's talking about it. Even the morning radio shows are chiming in. One host called it a uniformed predator hiding in plain sight." "That's good," Sarah said, "because public pressure is the only thing that gets past internal filters." She refreshed a live tracker. The hashtag just hit number 3 nationwide. Maya's hands tightened around her phone. "We're not ready for a full media assault. Not yet. No one ever is," Sarah said. "But if we don't control the narrative, they will." Maya looked up. "Then we respond. Carefully, clearly. We release a short statement confirming that multiple survivors have come forward, that an internal record exists, that this is part of a larger pattern. And we say nothing about this video? Not yet," Maya said. "Let them scramble. Let them lie. Then we drop the documents, the reports, the testimony, all of it." Sarah stared at her for a long second. Then she nodded. "You've got instincts. You sure you've never done this before?" "Just never out loud," Maya said. The office phone rang. Sarah picked it up, listened for a few seconds, and handed the receiver to Maya. "It's WATL News. Local. They want your voice." Maya hesitated, then took the call. "This is Maya." A calm, professional voice came through. "Miss Thomas, we're airing a segment at noon on the Dalton. Footage. Would you be willing to comment?" "Not at this time," Maya said. "But when I do speak, I promise you won't have to ask twice." She hung up. Sarah turned back to her screen. "Hold on. He's going live." "Who?" "Dalton," Sarah said. "He's holding a press conference 10 minutes from now. Department lobby. Live streaming it through their official page." Maya pulled it up. The countdown was already on. At the top of the feed, press briefing. Officer Rick Dalton addresses recent accusations. "They're putting him out front," Maya said. "They're letting him speak for them." "Or they're sacrificing him," Sarah added. "If he implodes, they'll distance themselves and act surprised." "Let's see what he does," Maya said. "Let's see what spin looks like when the cameras roll." The feed clicked to life. Rick Dalton stood behind a podium, dressed in full uniform, clean-shaven, flanked by 2 silent, unsmiling department heads. He looked confident, too confident. "I've served this city for over 15 years," he began, voice steady, "and I've done so with honor and within the bounds of the law. The recent video circulating online is being misrepresented, taken out of context. These allegations are false, and they are being driven by individuals with personal vendettas and an agenda to smear law enforcement." Maya's stomach turned, but she didn't flinch. "Let him talk," she muttered. "Let him dig," Rick continued. "I welcome a full investigation. I have nothing to hide, but I will not be intimidated by a viral mob or coerced into silence." Sarah glanced at Maya. "He's not just defending himself. He's daring us to respond." "And we will," Maya said coldly, "but not with hashtags, with facts." Dalton ended the briefing with a practiced nod. "I did my job, and I'll continue doing it." The screen went black. Maya looked at Sarah. "Then let's show them what his job really looked like." The press room inside Fulton Police Headquarters was packed beyond fire code limits. Cameras lined every wall. Microphones sprouted like weeds across the podium. Officers lined the back, their expressions carefully neutral, arms folded, bodies rigid. On one side stood the brass, the command staff, tight-lipped and polished. On the other stood members of the media, eyes narrowed, fingers twitching over keyboards, waiting for a spark. Rick Dalton stepped up to the podium, flanked by his attorney, Douglas Price, a man with the measured confidence of someone who had deflected more than one scandal before lunch. Rick adjusted the microphone, took a long breath, and began. "The past 72 hours have been difficult," he said, projecting the gravity of a man under siege. "Not just for me, but for every honest officer who puts on this uniform and risks their life for this city." Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned forward. "The footage circulating online is taken wildly out of context," he continued. "The accusations against me are not only false, they are dangerous. They represent a coordinated smear campaign designed to discredit law enforcement at large, using my name as a pawn." At his right, Price stepped forward. "Let's be clear," he said, his voice slick and sharp. "My client has a spotless record. No criminal charges, no sustained complaints. What we are witnessing is a calculated attempt to destroy his career and reputation for political and personal gain." Rick folded his hands and let the lawyer do the heavy lifting. "We've identified the woman behind the most vocal accusations," Price continued. "Maya Thomas, a marketing consultant turned activist overnight. She claims to represent victims, but what she truly seeks is attention. Her story, full of inconsistencies. Her motives, suspect. Her platform, built on exaggeration and opportunism." The word opportunism echoed across the room like a warning shot. Maya wasn't present, but her name was. Loud, deliberate, accusatory. Price scanned the room. "We are preparing legal action against any outlet or individual who continues to promote defamatory content without verified evidence. My client has nothing to hide, but he will not stand silently while his name is dragged through the mud by people seeking clicks and clout." Rick took the mic again. "I've dedicated my life to serving this community. If some people want to take one moment and twist it into a narrative, let them. But I won't stop doing my job, and I won't be intimidated." He stepped back. No questions were taken. No follow-up allowed. The feed cut off moments later, but the aftershocks rippled far beyond the press room walls. Within the department, the reaction was immediate and divided. In the locker rooms, murmurs started. Some officers defended Rick. "He's being set up," one said. "They're trying to make an example of a guy who just did his job." "This whole thing smells like a witch hunt," another agreed. "One shaky video, and now he's a monster?" But others remained quiet, or worse, conflicted. Officer Jamie Ortega sat at her desk staring at her inbox. Inside were internal memos, one of which warned officers not to speak to the media without departmental clearance. Another urged solidarity in the face of external attacks. But the comments in the break room had shifted. She'd heard the clip. She'd seen the video. She'd also heard things, stories whispered between shifts, rumors about Rick's behavior during training assignments, things she'd once brushed aside. And now they came back, sharper, louder. Others like her were starting to question too. Young officers. Ones who had learned from Dalton but had always felt something off, something just beneath the surface. Still, few dared to speak. The culture was too ingrained. Protect the shield, close ranks, loyalty over scrutiny. Inside, voices, united. Maya watched the press conference replay on mute. She didn't need to hear it. She had already seen enough. She recognized the strategy: discredit the accuser, weaponize the badge, cast doubt on truth by making it personal. He's not just denying the accusations, Maya said. He's turning me into the villain. Sarah stood nearby, arms folded. And not just you, every woman who's ever spoken up. It's going to get worse, Maya said. They'll dig through everything I've ever posted, every job I've ever held, every name I've ever been connected to, and then they'll go after the others. They already are, Sarah replied. Clara called. A blogger posted a piece implying she fabricated her story for a settlement payout. Isabel's getting messages through fake accounts, calling her unstable. They wanted to make us afraid of being believed, Maya said. No, Sarah corrected. They want to make you too exhausted to keep going. Maya turned back to the screen. Rick's face froze mid-sentence. Calm, controlled, calculated. We need a win, she said. Something solid, something real. They're using every tool they have to frame this as hysteria. You'll get it, Sarah said, because now the Department of Justice is watching. Maya turned sharply. What? Sarah walked over with a printed letter in her hand. We've just been notified. The federal prosecutor's office has opened a preliminary inquiry into patterns of abuse and cover-up. They're summoning you and the other named survivors to an initial closed-door hearing. Evidence review, testimony collection. It's happening. Maya read the letter, her eyes moving quickly over the language. This isn't just an investigation into Rick, it's systemic. Exactly, Sarah said. And once it begins, they can't control the narrative anymore. Maya folded the letter and slid it into her bag. Then let's give them everything they need. As the department doubled down on denial, Maya and the women they tried to silence were now preparing to speak under oath. And this time, the whole system would be listening. The waiting room outside the U.S. Attorney's office in downtown Atlanta was quiet, sterile, and heavy, with a kind of pressure that settled in the chest. The fluorescent lights hummed low. A clock ticked in the corner, each second feeling deliberate, measured. Maya sat in one of the chairs along the wall, her hands clasped in her lap. Clara and Isabel flanked her, both dressed plainly but sitting upright, alert. Their eyes occasionally met but quickly drifted apart again, each lost in a private storm of thought. Across the room, Janet Reeves stood near the window, gazing out with arms folded. She didn't pace, she didn't fidget, she just waited. She'd done this before, only this time the silence was working for her, not against her. The door to the inner office opened. A man in his early 40s with a trimmed beard, sharp suit, and a worn leather briefcase stepped out. Pablo Green, Assistant U.S. Attorney, Federal Prosecutor. He nodded once. We're ready for you. One by one, they entered. The interior conference room had no cameras, no microphones in plain sight, and no press. Just a notary, a court reporter, and 3 Department of Justice staffers seated at the far end, each with a laptop and a copy of the printed packet Sarah had submitted weeks earlier. Pablo stood at the head of the table. First, he said, I want to thank all of you for being here. This isn't a trial. This isn't testimony for public record. Yet, this is fact-finding. But let me be clear. What you say today can and will shape the scope of what we pursue. We're listening. You have our attention. Maya exhaled slowly. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. Pablo nodded toward the clerk who started recording the statements. Maya, Thomas, he said, we'll begin with you. Maya sat up straighter. Her voice didn't shake. She spoke clearly, chronologically, documenting every detail from the day of the assault. Rick Dalton's words, his tone, the way his hand moved, the moment he lifted her dress, the bystanders, the silence, the cameras, the aftermath. She didn't embellish. She didn't hesitate. When she finished, the room stayed silent for a beat. Pablo looked at the notary and then to Maya. Thank you, he said. That was clear, specific, and legally significant. Clara went next. Her story unfolded like a wound reopened. She described the sidewalk, her 2 children, the grip on her shoulder, the threats about child services, the humiliation that followed in front of people who said nothing. Her voice cracked once but never broke. I thought staying quiet protected them, she said, her eyes locked on Pablo. But it didn't, and now I need them to see their mother didn't stay scared. Isabel followed. She described the bus terminal, her personal belongings scattered, her body treated like a threat. He wanted me to be afraid, she said, and I was, but now I'm done pretending that fear means guilt. Pablo turned to Janet Reeves last. I'm aware of your background, he said, but I want it on record. Janet placed both palms on the table and spoke with precision. She detailed her time in internal affairs. Her first flagged report on Rick Dalton, the girl he had stopped at Eastview Academy, the obstruction from her superiors, the reassignment, the retaliation. They didn't just silence me, she said. They punished me for not staying quiet. I lost my pension, my title, and nearly my sanity, but not my memory. Pablo leaned forward. Do you have supporting documents? Janet handed over a flash drive. Scanned memos, redacted emails, and archived logs I was never supposed to keep. I kept them anyway. Pablo accepted it, then looked around the table. This is what we needed, he said. These stories, together, outline not just a pattern of abuse, but a system of active protection and passive neglect. That's how predators survive in uniform. He turned toward his team. We're opening a formal criminal investigation into Officer Rick Dalton. Charges pending may include assault, civil rights violations under color of law, and evidence suppression. We'll also subpoena the department's internal affairs records and staff communications. He looked back at Maya and the others. We'll be calling additional witnesses from past complaints. Some of you may be asked to testify before a grand jury. We'll coordinate protection if needed. Maya nodded, feeling a strange mix of resolve and weight. She hadn't won anything, but someone, finally, was calling it what it was, a crime. The room began to empty, one woman at a time. Clara helped Isabel with her coat. Janet exchanged a quiet nod with Pablo. Maya lingered for a moment, waiting until it was just her and Pablo. What happens if they come for us now? She asked. They will, he replied. That's the nature of power. It strikes hardest when it feels threatened. Then we're doing something right, she said. Yes, he said. You are. Maya left the building with Sarah waiting outside. As they stepped into the street, Maya's phone buzzed. One new email. No sender, no subject. She opened it. Attached was a photo. Her bedroom. Her shirt off. The angle from a distance. Through a window. The caption read, "Keep your mouth shut, or this goes everywhere." She stopped walking. Sarah noticed immediately. What is it? Maya turned the screen to show her. Sarah went pale. We need to trace that. We will, Maya said. But her face had already hardened. Let them come, because For the first time, the law was listening, and Maya Thomas was not going back into silence. The blinds were drawn tight in Pablo Green's office, the light inside kept low and focused. Outside, traffic hissed against wet pavement, but the air inside was sharp with urgency. A single lamp lit the desk where Pablo sat, sleeves rolled up, glasses perched on his nose, eyes fixed on the monitor. Maya stood beside him, arms folded across her chest, her jaw tight, her focus unblinking. On the screen, the email. No subject, no sender, just one line of threat beneath a photo that had no right to exist. "They want you scared," Pablo said. "They want hesitation. They want you to doubt if this is still worth it." "It's not working," Maya replied. Her voice was flat, cold. "We forward it to cybercrime?" "Already done," Pablo said. "I've got a digital forensics expert digging into the headers. Whoever sent it was smart. They masked it through a proxy. But we've seen this trick before, and we know where to look." "He had to know I'd bring this here," Maya said, "which means he's not worried. He thinks we can't touch him." "Which makes him reckless," Pablo said. "And that's when predators slip." Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a printed version of the email. "We need to find out how close he got to take this. This wasn't a public window shot. This came from somewhere personal." Pablo examined the photo again. Curtains drawn halfway, room dim, mid-evening, street-facing window. Maya nodded. "But it's on the second floor. Whoever took this had height, or access." Pablo's phone buzzed. He answered, listened in silence, then hung up. "We've got something. The sender's IP routed through a dummy domain in Nevada, but our guy traced the entry node. The origin was a government-issued laptop, pinging off an encrypted Fulton County Police Department server." Maya exhaled. "Rick, not conclusively," Pablo said, "but whoever sent it had access to internal tech. That narrows it." "You think it was him?" Maya asked. "I think someone with his clearance wanted you to believe it was him," Pablo replied, "either to intimidate you or to force a misstep. But they overplayed their hand." He turned the monitor so she could see the trace log. "This signature matches an administrative login from 2 weeks ago. Same system used to process officer report archives. It's either Rick or someone in his circle. And either way, it's illegal." "So we press charges?" Maya asked. "Not yet," Pablo said. "We need to build the foundation before we strike. But this," he gestured to the screen, "this is fuel." Maya leaned forward. "He's not just trying to erase the truth. He's trying to rewrite it in fear." "That's what abusers do," Pablo said. "They don't stop with bodies. They move to minds. Control becomes survival for them." Maya stared at the photo again, but this time with fire instead of dread. "Then let's give him something he can't control." Pablo leaned back. "You're handling this better than most seasoned witnesses." "Because I've already lived through the worst part," she said. "Now I get to fight back." A knock at the door interrupted them. An assistant stepped in, holding a yellow envelope. "From DOJ Tech Division," she said, then left. Pablo opened it. Inside was a printed summary. He read quickly, then looked up. "It's confirmed. The email was sent from a department machine assigned to the Internal Misconduct Unit, and that unit was overseen by Rick's close associate, Captain Warren Hale. So the rot isn't just Rick," Maya said. "It's who protected him." Pablo nodded. "We built the case around that. Pattern of behavior, access, abuse of technology to silence victims. It's not just assault anymore. It's retaliation, obstruction, cybercrime." "How fast can we move?" Maya asked. "Faster than they expect," Pablo said. "But we'll need more. A piece they don't see coming." As if on cue, Pablo's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, then answered. "Green," he said. There was a pause. Then Pablo sat up straighter. "Repeat that?" Another pause. Yes, immediately. Bring him in. He hung up and turned to Maya. You're about to get your next witness. Who? Officer Ethan Reyes, Pablo said. He just walked into our downtown office and said 6 words. I'm ready to make a statement. Maya didn't smile, but her breath eased, if only slightly. He was there, she said. He saw what happened. And he's not staying silent anymore, Pablo replied. Let's hope he has more than guilt. Let's hope he kept records. Even if he didn't, Maya said, a badge stepping forward means the wall is cracking. And when the wall cracks, Pablo said, the ones hiding behind it run out of places to stand. Maya reached for her bag, the printed threat still inside. Let's make sure when it falls, it crushes the right name. Pablo looked at her, then the email, then the evidence board growing behind him. They tried to scare the wrong woman. No, Maya said. They scared the right one. That's why I'm not leaving. Ethan's testimony was now minutes away, and, with it, the balance of silence and truth was about to shift for good. The diner sat just off Route 78, an unremarkable place with flickering neon lights and cracked leather booths. It was the kind of establishment no one paid attention to, which made it the perfect place for someone trying not to be seen. Officer Ethan James sat at a corner table near the back, a black hoodie pulled over his uniform shirt, a ball cap low over his eyes. He wasn't on duty. He hadn't been for 3 days, but the badge still weighed heavy in his pocket, a symbol of everything he had once believed in, and everything he now questioned. Across from him sat Pablo Green, briefcase at his side, coat still buttoned. Maya stood nearby, silent, arms crossed as Ethan slid a worn envelope across the table. Pablo opened it without a word. Inside were printed screenshots, text message exchanges between Ethan and Rick Dalton over a span of 6 months. Most were benign, shift updates, assignment notes, but then came the darker lines. Dalton, if you ever grow a conscience, you better grow a lawyer too. Dalton, you didn't see anything. You don't know anything. You're smart enough to act like it. Dalton, the next rookie who talks ends up writing parking tickets in Macon. Pablo's hands moved steadily, separating each page, his expression unreadable. These are time-stamped, pulled from my backup, Ethan said. I kept them in case something ever went sideways. Didn't know I'd need them for this. Maya sat now, watching him. What made you finally step out? Ethan looked up, watching you speak at that federal hearing. You weren't supposed to hold your ground. You weren't supposed to keep going. But you did, and that scared the hell out of people I thought were untouchable. He reached into his backpack and withdrew a flash drive. This, he said, placing it on the table, is the other piece. Pablo picked it up. What's on it? Internal reports from the misconduct review files, Ethan said, on Dalton, but they're different from the copies the victim submitted. The language was softened. One complaint had entire lines removed. Another was marked closed due to non-response, even though I know the victim followed up twice. Fabricated exoneration, Pablo said. Departmental editing of misconduct records. That's not a mistake, Maya said. That's conspiracy. It is, Ethan said. And it's been happening for years. I didn't see it clearly at first. We're trained not to. We're told to trust the chain of command. But that chain was welded together with silence and threats. Pablo slid the materials back into his briefcase. You'll testify to this? Yes, Ethan replied. Under oath, on the record. I'm done being afraid of the wrong thing. You know what they'll do to you, Maya said. They'll try to make you look like a bitter defector, like someone who just wants revenge. They can try, Ethan said, but I've got nothing left to protect except the truth. Outside the window, headlights swept across the gravel lot. Ethan glanced back once but didn't flinch. There's more, he said. I've got names, officers who knew. A few who helped bury the files. I can't guarantee they'll all flip, but some are scared. They know Dalton's going down. They're just waiting to see if it's safe to jump. We'll take their names, Pablo said. But this, he held up the flash drive, this is the hinge. This is what makes the case more than personal. Maya leaned in slightly. You were there when he lifted my dress. Yes, Ethan said, meeting her gaze. And I did nothing. I've replayed that moment every day since. I could have stopped it. I didn't. But I can help stop what comes next. Pablo nodded slowly. You just changed the scale of this investigation. The charges against Dalton are no longer limited to misconduct. We're looking at obstruction, evidence tampering, and coordinated cover-up. This just became federal felony territory. Ethan exhaled. Then I'll be there when it lands. A waitress approached, but no one ordered. The coffee on the table remained untouched. Ethan stood. I've said what I needed to say. You have my statement. You have my files. I'll be ready when you call. He looked at Maya again. I'm sorry it took me this long. You're here now, she said. That's what matters. Ethan nodded once, turned, and walked out into the cold. His silhouette disappeared into the night. Pablo turned to Maya. You okay? He was the missing link, she said. Now we close the gap. Pablo's phone buzzed. He glanced down, then passed it to her. The notification was from the federal clerk's office. Trial date. Set. State of Georgia versus Officer Richard Dalton. Initial proceedings begin March 21st. That's in 3 days, Pablo said. They're moving fast. Maya read the line twice, then looked out the window where Ethan had gone. They should be, she said, because now we're not just chasing justice. We're chasing every lie that let him hide this long. Pablo closed his briefcase. Then, let's make sure no one looks away again. 3 days. The countdown had begun. But truth has enemies, and Maya Thomas was about to meet them face to face. The underground parking garage beneath Maya's building was mostly empty by the time she got home. Concrete pillars cast long shadows across dim rows of parked cars, the only sound the slow hum of fluorescent lights overhead. She held her keys tight in one hand, her other gripping her tote bag. It had been a long day of prep with Pablo's team. Evidence files, witness logistics, trial strategy. Everything was moving fast now. She could feel it. The trial was 3 days away. Every step felt heavier. Every silence felt sharper. She turned the corner toward her usual parking spot, her heels echoing louder than usual. The moment she sensed something was wrong, it was already too late. A figure stepped out from between two SUVs. Tall, hoodie up, gloves on. No words, no warning. He lunged. Maya's instincts kicked in. She twisted her body and shoved her bag toward him as a barrier. He grabbed for her phone instead, tearing it from her grip as she stumbled backward. One knee hit in the concrete. She shouted, loud and sharp, and he struck her, just once, fast, a backhand to the side of her face that sent her reeling. Then he bolted. She didn't see his face, but she saw the car, a black sedan, running engine. He jumped into the passenger side and the car peeled away before the door had even shut. Maya scrambled to her feet and sprinted toward the exit ramp, heart pounding, blood hot in her ears. She burst through the security door into the lobby where the night guard stood up in surprise. "Call the police," she said, her voice ragged. "I was attacked. He stole my phone." 10 minutes later, 2 patrol cars arrived. She recognized neither of the officers, which helped. They took her statement, called forensics, and walked with her back down into the garage. One of them pointed at the ceiling. "Good news," he said. "You got a camera. Bad news? It's old. Might be low res." But 20 minutes later, the footage came through. The angle was grainy, but clear enough. Maya watched the moment play out from above. The attacker stepping from the shadows, the struggle, the blow, the car. then the plate. It was visible for 2 seconds as the brake lights flashed red. The plate number froze on screen. The lead officer whistled low. "That's something." "Can we run it?" Maya asked. "We already did," he said. "Registered to a rental. Out of state. Picked up by someone with a fake ID, now under review." "Which means it was planned," she said. "Absolutely," he replied. "He wasn't just trying to rob you. That was a message." Maya touched her jaw where the bruise had started to form. Her voice was steady. "Then let's send one back." The footage, along with the police report and Maya's statement, were uploaded directly to the DOJ's secure evidence portal. Pablo was alerted immediately. By the time Maya got back to her apartment, he had already called. "We're escalating," he said. "The FBI's taking over the investigation into the assault. This just shifted into a new category." "Retaliation?" Maya asked. "Obstruction, witness intimidation, and federal conspiracy if we can link the car to anyone connected to the department," he said. "We're requesting subpoenas for every officer with access to rental data, GPS records, internal schedules." "They wanted to scare me silent," Maya said. "That's what this was." "And they failed," Pablo replied. "Now they're the ones exposed." Maya stood by the window of her apartment and looked down at the street. For a second, every car seemed suspicious, every shadow too still, but she didn't step away. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we take off the gloves," Pablo said. "We bring the FBI into full coordination with our office. We move fast. We treat this like what it is, a coordinated attempt to undermine federal proceedings." "Let them come again," Maya said. "I won't be the one running." Pablo was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I believe you." The next morning, the footage from the garage was reviewed by FBI forensic analysts. Plate numbers were traced. Surveillance footage from the rental agency was pulled. Even the gas station down the block from where the vehicle was returned submitted its security reel. Maya's face, bruised but calm, became part of a new case file. Not a victim of assault, a federal witness under threat. At Voices United, Sarah reviewed the report in disbelief. "This isn't just about Rick anymore," she said. "It never was," Maya replied. "Rick is the rot, but the roots go deeper. And now we dig," Sarah said. The system had thrown a punch in the dark, but this time Maya caught it, and she wasn't letting go. The federal courtroom in downtown Atlanta was designed for silence. Polished floors, heavy oak panels, a high ceiling meant to carry voices with precision. But that morning, the silence didn't come from the architecture. It came from the tension. The gallery was full. Journalists, survivors, law students, off-duty officers, and civilians who had followed the headlines for weeks. Cameras weren't allowed, but the eyes inside were sharper than lenses. At the front, Rick Dalton sat at the defense table in a pressed suit, his expression unreadable. His lawyer, Douglas Price, whispered something in his ear. Rick didn't blink. Across the aisle, Maya sat behind the prosecution desk with Pablo Green beside her, reviewing notes with calm efficiency. Clara and Janet were seated a few rows behind. Ethan sat farther back, face tight, hands gripping his lap. When the judge entered, the room rose, then settled. The clerk read the case number, the charges, the names. Then, "The prosecution may call its first witness." Pablo stood. "Your Honor, we call Maya Thomas to the stand." The courtroom shifted slightly as Maya rose. Every footstep toward the witness box echoed. She didn't look at Rick, not yet. She raised her right hand, took the oath, sat down, adjusted the mic. "State your name for the record." "Maya Thomas." "And what do you do, Ms. Thomas?" "I work in marketing and communications," she said. "But that's not why I'm here today." "Correct," Pablo said. "You're here as the complainant in this case. Tell the court what happened on the afternoon of March 3rd. Maya took a slow breath. Then she spoke. I had just left a Starbucks on Peachtree and 8th. It was 4:17 p.m. I remember because I had a calendar notification go off for a Zoom meeting I skipped. I was wearing a white dress. I remember that too. It matters. The room was so quiet, the whir of the air conditioning could be heard. As I was walking down the sidewalk, Officer Dalton approached me. I didn't know who he was. He said I matched the description of a suspect. I asked what suspect. He didn't answer. He asked to search my bag. I refused. He called that suspicious. She paused. Her hands were steady. A crowd gathered. He made a scene. I stood my ground. I told him he could arrest me or let me go. He did neither. He grabbed my bag, emptied it on the sidewalk. He found nothing. Then he said I might be hiding something under my dress. Rick sat motionless at the defense table. Pablo didn't interrupt. He reached toward me. I slapped his hand. I told him to stop. I told him it was illegal. He ignored me. He grabbed the hem of my dress and pulled it upward, above my knees. In public, in daylight, surrounded by people who said nothing. Someone in the back of the courtroom gasped quietly. The judge didn't gavel it down. "What happened next?" Pablo asked. "I fought him," Maya said. "I screamed. I pushed. He shoved me back, said I was resisting. Then he walked away like nothing happened." "Did anyone intervene?" "No, but someone recorded it. It spread online. That's when it became a story. Before that, it was just my shame. And now, she said, it's my weapon." Pablo nodded. "No further questions at this time." He returned to his seat. The judge turned to the defense table. "Mr. Price?" Price stood slowly, buttoning his suit. He walked to the podium and paused, then approached the witness box with the practiced calm of someone about to throw a calculated punch. "Ms. Thomas," he began, "you said you stood your ground. Correct. You said you fought back. Yes. And you admit, under oath, to striking a law enforcement officer?" "I slapped his hand away from my body," she said, "to stop him from lifting my dress." "Which could be interpreted as physical resistance, yes?" "Not if you understand consent," Maya said. A ripple went through the gallery. Price didn't flinch. "Have you ever had any previous run-ins with law enforcement?" "No." "Any history of instability?" "No." "Of emotional distress?" "Everyone has emotional distress, Mr. Price." "Any psychiatric treatment?" "No," she said flatly. "Ever had an abortion, Miss Thomas?" The air snapped. Pablo rose instantly. "Objection! Irrelevant and inflammatory." The judge's voice cracked like a whip. "Sustained. Mr. Price, approach." A hush swept over the room as both attorneys met the bench. Voices low, sharp. The judge's eyes narrowed. She gave a nod. The attorneys returned. "Strike the last question from the record," the judge said. "Jury will disregard." But the damage was done. The line had been spoken. The implication floated in the air like smoke. Maya stayed still. Then she leaned into the mic. "Yes," she said. "I had an abortion when I was 22. I wasn't ready, and I'm not ashamed of that. But I'm here because I was assaulted by a man who wore a badge, not because of a decision I made over a decade ago." The room froze. Then, slowly, something shifted. Heads turned. Backs straightened. Even the court reporter stopped typing for half a second. Rick's face was pale, his jaw tight. Pablo gave her a small nod. She had just taken control of the narrative. Again, the judge adjourned for recess. Maya stepped down. As she passed Rick, she didn't look away. And this time, no one lifted her dress. But she had stripped the courtroom bare. Day 2 of the trial began under gray skies. The rain had stopped just before dawn, but the streets outside the courthouse still glistened, as if the city itself hadn't quite dried off from what had happened inside the courtroom the day before. Maya arrived early, escorted through a side entrance by federal marshals. There were more reporters now, more bystanders, more eyes. But inside the courtroom, the weight didn't come from the cameras or the headlines. It came from what Maya knew was waiting: Douglas Price and whatever he'd prepared next. At 9:01 a.m., court was called to order. Judge Harrow took her seat, flanked by the clerk and court officer. Rick Dalton sat at the defense table in the same dark suit, the same indifferent posture. His face was calm, but his knee tapped beneath the table. Pablo Green leaned over and whispered something to Maya, his tone measured. She nodded but didn't reply. A minute later, Price approached the bench. "Your Honor," he began, "we would like to resume cross-examination of Ms. Thomas." Maya returned to the witness stand. The gallery was full again, Clara and Isabel seated just behind the railing, Janet near the aisle, Ethan 2 rows behind. When Maya adjusted the mic, her fingers no longer trembled. She was ready, or she thought she was. Price began slowly. "Ms. Thomas, you've stated multiple times that your refusal to comply with Officer Dalton was because you believed your rights were being violated." "Yes," she replied. "You also admit that you raised your voice and physically pushed his hand." "Yes, in response to an unlawful action." Price nodded. "And yet, instead of filing a complaint immediately, you chose to go online. You posted about it publicly, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Is that correct?" I shared what happened. The video was already being circulated. "Indeed," Price said, holding up a printed screenshot. "This is your post. They tried to humiliate me. Now I'm going to make sure the world knows." "Is that an accurate quote?" "Yes." "Would you describe yourself as someone seeking public attention?" Maya didn't answer immediately. Then, "I would describe myself as someone seeking justice." "Justice," Price repeated. "But not privacy? Not resolution through internal procedures?" "I tried internal procedures. They denied my complaint in less than 72 hours. So instead, you chose to become the face of a movement." "I didn't choose that," Maya said. "The system forced it." "Interesting," Price said, pacing slowly now, "because we've spoken with your former colleagues, former clients. You branded yourself as a survivor. You accepted podcast interviews, spoke at 2 public rallies. You had shirts made with slogans, your face printed on one. Can you explain that?" Maya's voice was steady. "People wanted to stand with me. That's what solidarity looks like." "Or branding?" Price asked. "You leveraged your experience for influence, didn't you? You turned an encounter with a police officer into a personal campaign." Maya didn't respond. Price stepped closer. "Isn't it true, Ms. Thomas, that you resisted because it suited your narrative? Because being a victim gave you a platform you didn't have before?" Pablo rose. "Objection. Argumentative. Sustained," the judge replied. Price pivoted. "Do you consider yourself famous now, Ms. Thomas?" "I consider myself heard," she said. "Finally, because of what happened, or because of what you made it become?" Maya's jaw clenched. "Because I refuse to stay quiet like the women before me." Price leaned on the edge of the jury box now, addressing them more than her. "Ladies and gentlemen, we must consider motive. In an age of virality, influence, and personal gain, the line between truth and storytelling blurs. This witness built a story, a powerful one, but stories can be shaped." He turned back to Maya. "Did you shape yours?" Maya didn't blink. "No, I just stopped letting someone else shape it for me." Price held his gaze for another second, then said, "No further questions, for now." Maya stepped down. The room was silent, not out of sympathy, but tension. Even Pablo looked momentarily uncertain. The attack had landed, not in fact, but in implication. Maya returned to her seat, heart pounding. Not because of what had been said, but because she knew what Price was doing. He wasn't just questioning her. He was digging through her skin, peeling at scars to see what the jury would flinch at. Shame wasn't just a tactic, it was the defense's best weapon. But Pablo wasn't done either. He rose, approached the bench, and requested permission to introduce a new piece of evidence. The judge reviewed the motion silently, then gave a single nod. "Proceed," she said. Pablo turned to the jury. Earlier, the defense questioned whether Maya Thomas shaped her story. They questioned her truth. "I'd like to present a video that was not previously disclosed to the public. It was recovered from a business camera near Eastview Academy in 2019. It shows Officer Dalton conducting a stop and frisk on a female minor." The bailiff wheeled in a monitor. The room dimmed. The video played. It was short, only 24 seconds, but devastating. It showed Rick Dalton leaning close to a visibly uncomfortable young girl in a school uniform, pressing his hand along the hem of her skirt, then laughing as she tried to pull away. No arrest, no citation, just a gesture, a smirk, and a dismissal. In the video, Rick's voice could barely be heard, but the words were unmistakable. "You're lucky it's me and not someone rougher." Gasp rippled across the gallery. A juror covered her mouth. Rick's attorney froze. The judge did not call for order. She didn't need to. The courtroom had erupted, without sound, without shouts, just the unmistakable noise of belief shifting. And Maya, sitting in the front row, leaned back slightly. For the first time in 2 days, she let herself breathe. The trial wasn't over, but shame no longer belonged to her. The evidence presentation room inside the federal courthouse was silent but tense, as though the entire space was holding its breath. A soft click from the AV technician marked the start of a new exhibit in the prosecution's case, but it felt like the start of something more. The lights dimmed. The monitor flickered to life. Pablo Green stood at the center of the room, his back straight, his tone neutral. "Members of the jury, what you're about to see is footage pulled directly from a private security camera inside the back storeroom of the Starbucks on Peachtree and 8th, the same location where the incident involving Maya Thomas began. This footage had never been released publicly and was obtained via subpoena. It spans 3 separate days, each captured weeks apart, yet reveals a troubling pattern." He paused. "These clips speak for themselves." Maya sat beside Sarah and Ethan, her gaze locked on the screen. She had seen the footage once before in a private session with Pablo. It hadn't prepared her for the feeling of watching it in court. The first clip played. A timestamp marked it. February 12th, 3:08 p.m. Officer Rick Dalton walked through the staff hallway, radio on his shoulder, coffee in hand. 2 women were in the frame, one walking past him, the other crouched near a storage bin. Rick's eyes followed the first woman's legs with slow deliberation. His head turned as she walked by. He smirked. Then, as she rounded the corner, he glanced toward the ceiling as if checking for cameras. He did it casually, like a man who knew which ones weren't working. The second clip played. February 21st, 11:56 a.m. A different woman, same routine. Rick leaned against the frame of a doorway. She approached with a box, her skirt knee-length. As she passed, he shifted slightly, lowering his chin to look downward, eyes trailing her from hip to heel. Then he smiled, brief, private, almost proud. Again, a glance at the ceiling. The third clip, March 1st, just 2 days before Maya's incident. Same camera, same hallway. A young woman in slacks walked by. Rick leaned closer as if to speak, then let her go. When she turned away, he mouthed something and shook his head, half laughing. No audio was available, but the expression was clear. Dismissal, amusement, ownership. The video paused. Pablo turned to the jury. These are not isolated moments. They are instances of a repeated behavior pattern. Unprofessional, predatory, and consistent. Each time, the officer scans for visibility. Each time, his actions are concealed behind badge authority. He is not acting in response to a threat. He's observing, evaluating, enjoying. This is not law enforcement. This is objectification. He stepped aside. The room was quiet. One juror scribbled notes with a tight jaw. Another stared forward, unmoving. A third glanced at Rick Dalton, whose expression hadn't changed since the video began, but whose collar now appeared just slightly tighter around the neck. Pablo let the moment breathe. Then he continued. This footage validates what Maya Thomas described, not because it shows the same event, but because it proves Rick Dalton has done this before, and likely would have done it again. The badge didn't stop the behavior, it shielded it. He turned toward the judge. Your Honor, we request this footage be admitted into the official record as evidence of a pattern of conduct, pursuant to federal rules on character and motive in sexual misconduct cases. Any objection? The judge asked. Douglas Price rose slowly. We object on grounds of prejudicial impact versus probative value. Overruled, the judge said without hesitation. The evidence stands. Pablo gave a single nod. Then he turned back to the jury one last time. You've seen his hands. You've seen his eyes. Now you know what Maya felt wasn't paranoia. It was repetition. Maya exhaled, her breath steady. She could feel it, the shift in the room. The video hadn't just added weight. It had taken away Rick's last defense, doubt. It was no longer Maya's word versus his. Now it was evidence versus denial. The judge called for a recess. Jurors stood and were escorted out. The courtroom buzzed, but softly. Reporters scribbled. Observers whispered. Rick Dalton sat still, but his foot tapped under the table. When court reconvened, Pablo rose again. Prosecution would like to call its next witness, Janet Reeves. The gallery adjusted. Clara leaned forward. Isabel looked over at Maya. A new wave was coming, one with years of silence behind it, and this time the record would be harder to bury. On the third day of the trial, the courtroom took on a new weight, not of evidence, but of legacy. Janet Reeves, a former internal affairs officer who had once been a rising star in the department, now stepped forward to testify not as an investigator, but as someone silenced by the very system meant to uphold the law. Her posture was upright, her uniform replaced by a simple blazer, but there was no mistaking her former presence in the force. She took the stand, placed her hand on the oath, and began. I filed an internal complaint against Officer Rick Dalton in 2017, she said. It wasn't the first time someone in the department flagged him. It was just the first time one of us tried to act on it. Her voice didn't waver as she described the incident. An anonymous complaint filed by a teenage girl claiming Rick had inappropriately touched her during a routine stop. Janet had pushed for an interview. She had tried to escalate. What followed, she said, wasn't just resistance. It was sabotage. I was reassigned within a week, she continued, transferred out of internal affairs. My caseload was stripped. I received a written reprimand citing conduct unbecoming. 3 months later, I was pressured into early retirement. Pablo Green handed her a printed email chain, which she read aloud in court. In it, a senior official instructed a supervisor to cool Janet down before she brings heat on this nonsense. Another message from the same thread, Dalton's clean. Don't dig. Janet's emotional lately. The words were damning. The silence in the courtroom was heavier than before. Pablo spoke next, addressing the jury. This is not about a single bad cop. It is about an ecosystem that kept him in power, a structure that turned away, a command that chose comfort over accountability. That system is on trial, too. The judge allowed the documents into evidence. Janet stepped down to soft applause from the gallery. Not permitted, but not scolded either. The court had seen enough. The next day, the jury returned with their decision. Maya sat quietly, hands clasped together in her lap. Clara and Isabel sat just behind her, Janet beside Pablo. Ethan remained at the back, eyes on the floor, until the foreman stood. "In the matter of the United States versus Officer Richard Dalton," the foreman said, "we find the defendant guilty on all counts." The charges rang out: abuse of power under color of law, unlawful bodily search, witness intimidation, falsifying internal reports. Rick Dalton didn't move. He didn't react, but the courtroom did. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in federal prison. No parole, no badge, a lifetime ban from serving in public office or law enforcement. When he was led away in cuffs, no one clapped, no one cheered, but the silence this time was different. It wasn't tension, it was relief, it was vindication, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of trust. Outside the courthouse, Maya stood at a podium with Pablo beside her. "This was never about revenge," she said into the microphones. "It was about refusing to stay invisible and about holding power accountable to the people it's supposed to protect." In the weeks that followed, Maya joined Voices United full-time. She was invited to speak at a national conference on gender equity and law enforcement reform. There, in a packed auditorium, she stood alongside Clara, Isabel, and Janet. Together, they told their story, not as victims, but as organizers, as leaders of a new campaign, Power, Not Touch. The slogan spread quickly. It became a hashtag, then a petition, then a movement. The campaign pushed for better training, independent oversight, and protections for citizens against unlawful searches. Maya told the audience, "It didn't end in that courtroom. It began when we walked back outside." That night, after the conference, Maya received an email from a girl named Tasha, 15 years old. She said she'd watched the trial online with her mother. She said something had happened to her during a school security screening and no one had listened. "But seeing you," she wrote, "makes me think maybe they will now." Attached was a scanned letter from her state's congressional representative. Maya had been invited to testify before a committee in Washington, not just as a witness, but as a policy consultant. The next month, Maya walked into the Capitol in a black blazer and slacks. Her shoulders were straight, her voice clear. She stood before lawmakers and proposed a federal mandate, the Personal Integrity Act, a bill requiring law enforcement officers to obtain a warrant or show probable cause before initiating any physical body search, except in emergencies involving immediate danger. "This is not about weakening policing," Maya said. "It's about strengthening dignity. It's about putting clear lines between authority and abuse, and saying that no one, not even those in uniform, can cross those lines without consequences." Some in the chamber nodded, others scribbled notes. One congresswoman wiped a tear. The bill would take months to move, but something had already changed. Maya had walked in a survivor. She walked out a voice. On the steps of the Capitol, she addressed a group of students waiting outside. "If you've ever stayed silent while someone was being humiliated," she told them, "then today is your chance to speak up, not because it's easy, but because it's right." From a sidewalk in Atlanta to the halls of Congress, her story had traveled far, but it had never been just hers, and it wasn't over, because dignity didn't belong to a few. It belonged to everyone, and now, finally, the law was starting to remember that. What started as a single moment of public humiliation in a crowded street turned into something no one could have predicted: a courtroom reckoning, a national campaign, and a movement that reached all the way to the steps of Congress. Maya Thomas didn't ask to become a symbol. She never wanted the spotlight. But when power crossed a line that stripped her of dignity, and when the world seemed ready to look away again, she chose not to be silent. She chose to fight. And in doing so, she reminded all of us that change doesn't come from systems. It comes from people who refuse to accept what's broken. This wasn't just the story of a bad officer. It was the story of a system that protected him, colleagues who stayed quiet, leaders who buried complaints, policies that looked the other way until it was too late. But in the end, it was also the story of those who chose to speak. Janet, the officer who was punished for doing the right thing. Ethan, the one who found the courage to stop being a bystander. Clara and Isabel, who turned pain into action. And Maya, who took her trauma and turned it into legislation. The Power Not Touch campaign is more than a slogan. It's a shift in the conversation, a demand that bodily autonomy be respected, regardless of what uniform someone wears. It's a reminder that dignity is not a privilege. It's a right. The courtroom verdict may have brought justice to one man's actions, but the real victory was what followed. A national law inspired by survivors, a growing movement for reform, and a message that reverberates far beyond the walls of any courthouse. And yet, this fight is not over, because for every Maya who found a microphone, there are still many whose stories remain in whispers. For every courtroom that hears a case like hers, there are 100 others that never will. That's why what happens next is just as important as what came before. So now we ask you, what would justice look like where you live? What would it mean to feel safe, not just from crime, but from abuse disguised as authority? Let us know in the comments. We want to hear your voice. And if this story resonated with you, inspired you, or opened your eyes, take a moment to support this kind of storytelling. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to our channel, because these aren't just stories, they're reminders that one person can spark a movement, that one voice can make power listen, and that silence, when broken, can change everything.